Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making these super unique, super interesting vulva themed mittens. So let's get started. Okay guys, I just want to take up a couple minutes first to talk about yarn choices. You can use any yarn that you want, but it's the color choices that are pretty important in this. So because I'm making a vagina themed pair of mittens, as you do, I wanted my colors to be super fleshy, super meaty, like lots of different shades of pink, but I'm not in a position where I can go out and buy more yarn at the moment. So I kind of had to use what I've got here, and I've been waiting to use this wool here. This is a Temu score, but I absolutely love it. I've used it in so many different colorways. It's just such a lovely yarn to work with, but I haven't used these colors yet. And I thought, well, you know, this is pink, right? That's pink. So I thought I'd make my main mitten out of this pink. But obviously when I started, it didn't really turn out to be pink. It kind of turned out to be orange and purple and every color that wasn't pink, if you can see. And yeah, look, I am filming this on a pillow right now because I'm just a little bit lazy to sit up straight right now. But once I start the crochet tutorial, I'll be an adult. I'll do it on a proper desk, on a proper white background, okay? But, so the issue with this was, this isn't vagina themed at all. So what I had to do once I finished the wristband, I brought in this, which is, God, my favorite thing to double yarn with. It's a silk cotton ribbon, and it's just everything. It is luxuriously smooth. It has the most amazing silky feeling, but it also, because it's that ribbon shape, it just adds a lot of structure too. I really love double yarning with this. So what I did was just double yarn with that and with the wool to finish off the mitten, just to kind of break up those other colors, dull them down a little bit, and try to get a little bit closer back to this beautiful pink vagina that I initially had in mind. So when you are choosing your main mitten color, I think it really depends on whether you want your mitten to scream, "Look at my vagina," really loudly, or whether you want yours to be a little bit more subtle and go, huh, I mean, it may be a vagina, but it may just be a mitten as well. And I think then you'll decide whether to go for really, really obvious colors or something a little bit more subtle. So, colors. You need your main mitten color, and your main mitten color can also be your outer labia color. All right? So these two can merge into each other if you want. But for the vagina itself, you're going to need your outer labia color. This is generally going to be the closest to flesh color that you can find. And then you're going to need your inner labia color, and this is generally darker depending on depending on whose vagina you're trying to mimic will depend on the color. It could be red, it could be a dark pink, it could be brown, could be green if you're wanting to do a monster's vagina. But for me, this pair of mittens is actually my mother's 60th birthday present. Oh God. So, you know, I'm mimicking my mother's vagina, so I'm going with those colors. So I've got a fleshy toned outer labia, a darker pink for the inner labia, and then for the very center, I've gone a very dark, I guess ruby pink. So you're going to need 3 colors, 4 if you're going to do the mitten in a different color, but they They need to be 3 colors that are going to work with these different parts of the anatomy. Hopefully that makes sense. And you can go ahead and grab your colors and pick them out, and then we can get started. I'm gonna get off this couch because look, I don't even have enough space to show it. Then we can pick our colors and we'll get started. All right, let's do it. All right, so to start, we're going to make a slip knot with our main mitten color. And then from this point, we're going to chain however many chains it takes to reach the height of the wrist cuff that you want. So me, I'm going to chain 12. That's a good height for me, but depending on the type of yarn that you're using, depending on how high you want your wrist cuff to go, will depend on how many chains you make. Once you've chained the height of your wrist cuff, you're going to go ahead and chain 1 extra and then put a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. From here, we're just going to put a single crochet into each chain after until we reach the bottom of the chains that we just made. Once you've put a single crochet into each chain and you've reached the bottom, I will meet you there. Alright, so once you have single crocheted your way all the way to the bottom, just go ahead and count and make sure that you still have the same amount of stitches that you initially chained. Then we're going to go ahead and chain 1, turn our work, and for the next row we're going to be working into the back loops only. So if this is your first time, when you turn your work onto its side, you're going to see these V's. Each of these V shapes represent a stitch, and each V has a back loop and a front loop. So it's that back loop there that we want to be going under. So not under both legs, just under the back leg. So insert your hook underneath that back leg of the first stitch. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling. Oh dear. There we go. Yarn over, pull through a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook into the back loop of the next stitch. Put a single crochet in the back loop of the next stitch and just repeat all the way down, putting a single crochet into the back loop of each stitch until you make your way back to the bottom of your work. Alrighty, so once you have reached the bottom and you've made a single crochet into each back loop, go ahead and chain 1, turn your work, and then we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to put 1 single crochet into each back loop all the way back down to the bottom of the row. Once you get to the bottom, go ahead and chain 1 again, turn your work, and do another row of single crochets into each back loop back to the top of the row. Chain 1, turn your work, and repeat until you get to a size that fits around your wrist without stretching. But when it is stretched, you want it to fit over your fingers. If that makes sense. So make it fit your wrist at no stretch, and then at half to medium stretch it will fit over your fingers. Alright, once you have completed all of the rows to get to that size, I will meet you back here and we will start working on the top part of our mitten. Alrighty, so once you have finished your rows and you've made something that fits around your wrist and also stretches over your palm, you need to go ahead and count how many rows you've just made if you weren't counting as you went along. If you're not very good at counting rows, it is pretty easy to do when we have this rib stitch here. So you'll notice that on the front there's a line of raised rows, and on the back there's also raised rows. So each of these raised rows are a row. So we've got, this is 1 that's raised on the back, this is 2 that's raised on the front, 3 that's raised on the back, 4 that's raised on the front, 5 that's raised on the back, and so on and so forth. So if you just count all of those raised sections, front and back, that's going to tell you how many rows that you have. Once you've decided or counted how many rows that you have, you need to go ahead and write that number down somewhere. You'll need to know so that you can do it for the other mitten, but that's going to feel like a world away by the time you finish this one. So write it down somewhere that it won't get lost. Once you have your number of rows written down somewhere safe, we're going to go ahead and join our 2 pieces together to form a wrist cuff. So take both ends, fold your piece so that they lay flat on each other like so, and then with our working loop still attached, we're just going to go into the top corner stitch of the piece on the other side. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through a loop and pull that loop directly through the loop that's on our hook. From here on in, we're going to only work into the back stitches or the back loops. So into the next stitch, put your hook through the back loop on that side and the back loop of the other side. Sorry, this is really difficult to see when I'm looking at the phone screen instead of the actual piece of work, so it's looking a lot more complicated than it needs to be. But once you're in those 2 back loops, yarn over and pull through a loop and pull that loop directly through the loop that's on your hook into the back loop of the next stitch and the back loop of the stitch on the other side, and slip stitch through, and just continue this all the way down so that we have our piece connected. And once you reach the bottom, I will meet you there. Alrighty, once you have placed the last stitch and you have joined your wrist cuff, go ahead and chain 1. And now we're going to start working into these row ends. So we want to be placing 1 stitch into each row end, remembering that is each of these raised lines. So we're just going to do a single crochet into each row end. So I'll go into this first raised one, stick my hook wherever it will fit, pop a single crochet into there, and then into the one that's raised on the back, stick my hook wherever it fits, front, back, front, and just go around putting 1 single crochet into the end of each row, or you know, as much as you can figure out the end of each row. Doesn't have to be perfect. Might be a good idea to count how many stitches you're putting in as you go. A bit late to say that, sorry, but it would be really good to aim for the same amount of stitches when starting off the other one as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start counting to make sure I end up with the same as the first mitten I did, or close enough, and I will meet you once we get back to the first single crochet that we made. Alright, so once you have done a single crochet into each row end and you have written down how many single crochets you did, if you didn't write it down, that's okay. It's just really handy to try and make the opposite mitten roughly the same size. But once you've finished, we're just going to go ahead and slip stitch into the first chain that we made at the start of this round. Okay. Now from this point on is where I decided I needed to break this color up, and I started double yarning. So I'm just going to attach my silk cotton here. Oops, a daisy. Oh gosh. It's my bedtime, I think. Right, forgive me. So I'm just going to attach that there and pull through a loop. So I'll be working with 2 strands, but you can still just pretend I'm working with 1. So from here we are going to chain 2, and then we're going to put a half double crochet into every stitch along. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops that are on your hook. Into the next one, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops that are on your hook. And just go around putting 1 half double crochet into every stitch that we made on the previous round until you get to the last stitch of this round, and it's into that stitch that we are going to make an increase to start to widen our mittens just a little. So I will see you at that last stitch. Alrighty, so I am coming up to the last stitch, and you can tell it's the last stitch because this is where we made our chain 2 in the beginning. So right into that stitch where we made our chain 2, we're going to put 1 more half double crochet. And how this becomes an increase is with that half double crochet and that chain 2, it means there's 2 stitches in there. So then we're going to slip stitch into the top chain of that chain 2, and then we're going to chain 2 and repeat. So a half double crochet into every stitch around, including a half double crochet into the same stitch that we started, and then slip stitch into the top of the chain 2, and then chain 2 and go around again. And we want to just keep going around and around, making these rows until our mitten falls just short of where our thumb hole should be. So sorry about that, but just about here. And if you give me a hot minute, I'm going to turn off this camera and I'm going to work that up in super lightning speed, and I will come back and I will show you where we should be stopping these rounds to give you a better idea. If you want to go ahead and count how many rounds you make while you're at it, that's going to be really, really helpful to make sure that the next mitten that you do also has the same amount of rounds. Alright, you keep going and I will be back in just a jiffy to show you a visual of where we need to stop. I'll see you soon. Alrighty guys, so I've just whipped it up until the point where I need to start making the section for the thumb. So fast, wasn't it? You don't need to know that this is about a week later that I'm making this video and I'm already a couple of winds deep. But so I've just finished a row. I've just slip stitched into the chain 2 of the beginning of the row. And with my wrist cuff around my wrist, you can see that where this line, it's actually falling quite short of the thumb crease. You know, if you're thinking logically, you'd want to be making it up here to join it, but we're not thinking logically. You're not watching the channel of somebody who's thinking logically. So we're going to stop short of the thumb. All right, so keep doing your rounds until you get short of the thumb. Pretty much when you reach that lower thumb knuckle, that's where you want to be stopping. Finish your round with that slip stitch into the chain 2, and when you are done, meet me back here and we're going to do something else. All right, so once you've reached roughly a little bit below your thumb crease, you do need to go ahead and try to count the amount of rows that you've made in this mitten. Generally you've got these wee little circles in between each double crochet row. They're like little circle spaces, which may help you count a little bit. If you suck at counting rows like me, if you always come back with like a different number every time and you just don't have the patience for it, don't stress. Like, once you do move on to your second mitten, you can just kind of line them up. Line your wrist area up and then line your working piece up to reach the last row of the thumb. And you know, if it's roughly there, it'll be fine. Okay, so you don't have to turn into a perfectionist, but if you are that way inclined, count your rows. If you're not, just figure it out as you go, comparing the two pieces, if that makes sense. Right, so now we are going to just pop our glove on and make sure that the seam where we've been starting and ending our rows is on the inside of our hand, and it's going to look different for each glove just because of, you know, I'm a right-handed crocheter. The direction that the seam is going, this one's quite perfect because it's moving to the outside, whereas this one is going to be a little bit more meh. But you want to keep those seams on the inside, and you could replicate this by turning your piece of work inside out, but you're going to have the backs of the stitches then, and it's going to look just totally different to the other mittens. So just keep the seam on the inside, keep it out of sight, and it's gonna be fine. Don't stress too much. I mean, you're literally making something with a frickin' vagina on the thumb, so yeah. Now go ahead and just figure out generally, oh, I'm so sorry, that wasn't even in the frame. Just go ahead and figure out generally what kind of space you're going to be needing to connect around your thumb and which stitch you're going to want to connect into. Don't make it too short or too tight. So I'm thinking for me, maybe this one. Yeah, so that's a good thumb stitch for me. So I'm just going to like pull on that a little bit so it stands out. Hopefully it stays stood out. Yep. And then I'm going to go ahead and make, I'm going to say I'm probably going to need 4 chains to connect this, but that's the yarn and the hook size that I'm using plus my thumb size. You go ahead and chain whatever you need to fill that gap, but make it a little bit tight, yeah? Once you've made your chains, go ahead and slip stitch into your thumb stitch, and there we go, we have a thumb hole. It's a bit weird, it's a bit small and short and strange right now, but I'm gonna just say forget about that for now. We're gonna leave the thumb for now. We're gonna come back to that later. So moving on, we're going to chain 1. Turn our work so that we're working in our natural direction. And then we're just going to continue around with our half double crochet stitches. And I found on this glove, I had to start increasing because it was super tight around the fingers, yeah? So maybe try yours on and see if you've got a little bit of flexibility in the fingers. If you don't, you want to increase as well. It's going to have to be one of those try it on and figure out for yourself. Yeah. So what I did was I increased into every 5th stitch. So I just go along and put a half double crochet into the first 4 stitches. And then into the 5th, I just put 2 half double crochets. And then into the next 4, I just put 1 half double crochet. And then into the 5th, I would put 2 half double crochets into that same stitch. So if you're needing to increase, to be fair, it wouldn't hurt to increase even just for 1 round, just so you've got that nice open, oversized shape around your fingers. If you don't want to increase, that's totally fine. Just put 1 half double crochet into each stitch. If you are increasing, space it out a little bit so it's not a dramatic increase. Go every 5th, 4th stitch if you're using a thicker yarn. Until you get back to the start. Once you get back to the start, I will meet you there. Alrighty, so I am coming around my piece to where I made this thumb hole, or the separation for the thumb hole. So I'm going to do a half double crochet into the stitch just before the thumb hole, and then into these chains here. I'm just going to pick a side of the chain. So you've got the V. I'm going to pick one side of that V and just do my half double crochets into there, into each stitch. Last one's a bit of a bitch, but I'm in. She's in. All right, so that's the thumb hole covered, and then my chain 1 is just here. I am simply going to slip stitch into that chain 1 to finish the round. Now I'm going to try it on because I forgot whether I increased on the second round on the other one. So maybe you try yours on too. Make sure it's just a nice loose fit around the fingers. I reckon that's going to be pretty good. So from here, I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm just going to do 1 half double crochet into each stitch around. But if yours is still feeling like a little bit tight, a little bit snug, go ahead and do another round of increases. Maybe bump it up to every 7th stitch or something this time where you do your increases. But if you're happy where it's at, just go ahead and put 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way around. Alrighty, so I've come back to the end of that round. I'm just going to slip stitch into the top chain of the chain 2 that I made in the beginning. And then, you guessed it, I'm going to chain 2 and go around again. So just putting 1 half double crochet into each stitch. You shouldn't really need to increase any more by here, but if you've just fucked up somewhere and it's still pretty tight, add another round of increases. But from here you should be pretty sweet to just go ahead and put one half double crochet into every stitch. And then I just want you to repeat this, going in rounds of 1 half double crochet into each stitch. Joining at the chain 2, then chaining 2, starting a new round until your mittens reach a height on your hands where you feel like the ideal height for a mitten to fit is. So for this one, I finished about here and I wanted to top it off with my inner vagina color. And then I was like, you know what, that's still a little bit too short. Like it wasn't even reaching my finger gaps. So I went ahead and added this row of ruffles later, which I'm really loving the row of ruffles. So I will show you how to add the row of ruffles if that's something you want to do. Just make sure you do leave a little bit of space so you know it's not getting too high. And if you don't want the ruffles, if you just want it to be straight stitch all the way up, then straight stitch all the way up to the height that you want it to be. And once you've got it at the height that you want it to be, I'll meet you there. Once again, try and count the rows that you're doing in height just so that you can replicate it for the next one. I don't think I even counted or remembered how many rows I did for this one. So once again, don't stress. You can just compare pieces, line them up, get it close enough. It'll be fine. No one's going to be looking at your rows and your stitches. Everyone's going to be looking at the giant frickin' vagina that's around your thumb. So don't stress. It'll be fine. I'll see you at the top. Alrighty, so I have so much hair everywhere. There's so much hair in this piece. I've been going through a massive amount of hair loss at the moment with anemia. So I'm just weaving it into it. Luckily it's just for my mum, but that's not what I came here to talk about. I've just finished my portion of my fingers and I have measured it with my finished piece, and that looks about right to me. It looks pretty good. What do you think? Yeah? That looks pretty good. So now it is time, once you've reached where you want your finger height to be, it's time to bring out our inner vagina color. So that's going to be my ruby cotton. And I'm going to cut my color combination here. Finished with that for now. I will probably change my mind and come back to that later, but what I'm first going to do with my ruby cotton is just make this really subtle stitch break here of the ruby. It's a little less subtle on the inside, and I just like that stitch break effect. If you don't want to do this on the top, don't stress. It'll only take 2 minutes to explain, and then we're still going to need our inner vagina color, because after this we are going to bedazzle our vajazzle, and we're going to start from the center outwards. So go find your center color, your darkest, deepest, meatiest color that you want for the center of the vagina. And if you want to do a row at the top of the mittens like I've chosen to do, just go ahead and attach your yarn anywhere in any way that you like. And then you're just going to simply put a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. Once you get back to the stitch that you started on, just slip stitch into that, cut your yarn, and then hopefully that's not like explaining it too quickly. It's just single stitches, guys. Single crochets into every stitch, slip stitch into your first stitch, cut your yarn, and then we're going to move on to turning that weird little thumb hole into a beautiful blooming vagina. I'll see you there. Alrighty, my friends, so I've just finished my row of single crochet in my meatiest color. Up the top here I've fastened off, I've cut my yarn, and now it's time to turn the thumb into a vagina. So we're still going to start with our darkest color, our meatiest color, and we're going to be working from the inside out. So you'll be working from the darkest to the lightest color, if that makes sense. So I've got a bit of a tangle, hang on. So we're going to take our darkest color, or whatever color you want your very inner, I don't know why I still get coy when I say that, your very inner of your vagina to be. Make a slip stitch, attach the yarn to your hook, and then choose any of these stitches. I like the corner stitch just so I can remember where I'm at, and it makes attaching the other rows a little bit easier. Just attach your yarn into that stitch in any way you like to attach your yarn, and then we're just going to go around and do a row of single crochet into each stitch on this thumb. And it's going to be a little different once we start coming to where the thumb turns into the hand mitten part, so I'm going to do it with you. A single crochet into that last stitch before we get to this original row of chains that we made to join the thumb. So once we get to the original row of chains, we just want to be going into the back loop of those chains. So remember when we were building up our finger part, we went into one side of the V. Now we want to be going into the other side of the V, the back loop, to put our single crochets in. We don't want to be going under all the stitches because we're going to kind of connect everything to this, and we want that little bit of separation to be able to move our thumbs. So just try and get into the very back loop. I know it does look like I am picking up 2 stitches, but that's because I'm using 2 different types of yarn there. So really it is just 1 stitch, or 1 loop, sorry. It's a bit awkward, a bit weird. Most rounds of this thumb are going to be a little bit awkward and weird in some areas, but hey, what isn't awkward and weird about wearing a vagina on your thumb? So now I've just gone around the back loop of those original chains. I'm back to the corner where I started this round. I'm going to slip stitch into that first stitch that I made. And then I'm going to chain 1 and do another round of single crochets all the way around that thumb. Should be a lot easier this time because now we have all of our stitches established. Alright, and now that I am back at the start, I'm just going to slip stitch into the chain one at the beginning. And now we have a little thumb collar, I guess you'd call it. So we're about done with our deepest inner color. If you want to make that a little bit higher, maybe go ahead and try it on. But just remember that even though the inner area is going to be quite low, the outer area is going to be quite high. Yeah, so you don't want to go too crazy on the inner. That's merely just for that little bit of a suggestion in there, just that little peak of dark color. So don't go too high because otherwise you're going to end up with no thumb, just a vagina. So I think 2 rounds is enough, but free will is a beautiful thing. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And fasten off. Sorry, I didn't fasten that off. Yeah. Right, and now it's time to move on to our inner labia. So I did my inner labia in this color. This is such a beautiful vaginal color. Honestly, like I couldn't have picked better. Personally, for me, obviously everybody's vaginas are different colors, but for me and for the references that I have, it's such a beautiful color. Please just be super grateful with whatever color you have, and if you can match that as well as possible. So once again, we're just going to make a slip knot if that's your thing. Otherwise, just attach your yarn in whichever way you like, but we're not going to attach it to this top row that we've just finished here. For this one, we're going to attach onto these stems or the posts of these stitches. It's going to be a little bit tricky to see, I'm sorry, but you can see each stitch. So there's a stitch there, there's a stitch there, but in between the stitches is a gap. So we kind of want to go into that gap, around the back of the stitch, and come out of the next gap. I was looking at my work there, I wasn't looking at the camera, so I'm not sure if you could see that. Into the gap, around the stitch, and out the back. So they're going to be our foundations for this row and pretty much every new color change after this, okay? And that's on the bottom row, not the top row. So the bottom row of our base color, go into a gap between the stitches, go around the back of one stitch and out to the other side. So I'm going to do that here at the corner again. It just helps me keep track of where I am. Obviously it's going to be the most difficult, but I'm going to attach there with a single crochet. You can just tie a knot if you prefer to do that. Probably be a lot easier by the looks of it. Just trying to tidy things up here so you don't get confused. Alrighty, so now that I'm in on that bottom row, I'm attached. I'm just going to go all the way around the row, just putting down a row of single crochets, but using these posts as the stitch that I'm working the single crochet into. So I'm not working into the tops of the top, I'm working into these posts. So take your hook, insert it into the next gap you can find, bring it around the back of that stitch, pop it out through the next gap, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then yarn over and pull through two. Into the next gap, behind the next stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, pull through two. So I mean, essentially it's a back post single crochet, but with a twist, because we're building in 3D rather than in height. And you probably didn't need to hear that because it's probably confused the shit out of you. But hopefully this is making sense. I want you to work this round, work the foundation round into the posts of the first row of the last round. Oh, we're doomed. You can see what I mean though. So we're not interfering here. And the beauty of doing this means that we're still going to be working off this row. We're not going to start working into the hand part, because if we start working into this part, it's going to draw these together and we're not going to have that movement of the thumb. That's why we're doing it this way. So make your way around. Once you get back to the start, I'll meet you there and I will over explain the next part. Whoops a daisy. All right, I'll see you there. Actually, a little bit of a side note on that. I'm so sorry that you have to listen to me talk, but this has been brought up a few times. You know, different people like different things, different viewers like different things, and I've had not quite a few, but a few people reach out and be like, hey, you talk too much. You over-explain things. Like, we don't need to know all the details. We just need you to show us how to do it. And I'm like, yeah, nah. Like, that's not how I learnt crochet. You know, I would get enough insight, but I'd want to know what the stitches are doing and why they're doing that. And when I was able to pick up the meaning behind it, I could stop a tutorial halfway through and be like, right, I've got the idea, I'm good to go, and take it away from the tutorial and actually understand processes and stitches and meaning behind things, and be able to kind of make it my own. And that's where I've really been able to kind of turn into a freak with crochet. And I feel like if I'm only telling you what to do and not really explaining why we're doing it, then you're not learning. You're just following. And that's super cool if you just want to follow and end up with the exact same thing. But if you want to understand the processes so that you can in turn have an idea in your head, no matter how crazy your idea is, and then actually be able to make that idea work, something unique, something original, something a bit out there, then I think it's important that some things are a little bit over explained, that I'm not gatekeeping processes, not gatekeeping learning your way around stitches, learning your way around little shortcuts or hacks. And to be honest, like, I probably couldn't shut up if you paid me. So I'm an overgiver, I'm an overcarer, I'm an over-explainer, I'm an overachiever. That is just my style. So if my style works for you, stick around. Hopefully learn something and just like branch out and make it your own. If it doesn't work for you, I'm super sorry, hey, but this is me. and I'm freely giving myself, so I'm going to freely give every single part of me. All right, would you believe that that rant took us all the way to the end of this round? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually weave in these ends. I'm going to weave them in now because I feel like we're going to have so many ends here as we change colors, and it's just going to confuse the fuck out of people who are trying to watch what's going on. So give me a minute, I'll be back. All right, I'm back. I've weaved in those ends and I am coming to the end of this first round here. So all that I'm going to do is slip stitch into that first stitch I made in this color. From here I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to put a half double crochet into each stitch around, but just of this color. Yeah, we're forgetting about that inner color now. We're just working into the middle color. That's so tight, I don't know what's going on. So half double crochet into each stitch all the way around, and once you get back to the end, I will meet you at the end and we will change it just a little bit. All right, I am back. I'm just coming to the end of that first round. So all that I'm going to do to finish it is slip stitch into the first stitch of that round that I made. Whoop. Easy as that. Sorry, that's super tight. All right. Sorry about the camera wobbles. So next I'm going to go ahead and chain 2, and then I'm going to do this round with a half double crochet into each stitch. But for this round I actually want to start creating a little bit of shaping, so that this becomes less of a circle and more of a oval, I guess, like a teardrop shape, to mimic a vagina. So I'm going to put a half double crochet into every stitch until I reach what would be opposite my top seam here. So the top seam runs along where my mitten is, so just about here would be the opposite, and it's there that I'm going to do some increases. So 1 half double crochet into each stitch, and that feels pretty in line for me. Doesn't really matter if it's not. Hey, who's ever seen a perfectly asymmetrical vagina? But to me that feels pretty in line. So that stitch that I just did a half double crochet into, I'm going to put another 2 half double crochets into that same stitch, so 3 stitches into that 1 stitch in total. And that's given us a little bit of a peak there for our shape. From here I'm just going to put 1 half double crochet into every stitch until I get back to the stitch before I started this round. So here's the start of the round. This is the last stitch for me to do, and I'm going to go ahead and put another 3 half double crochets into this last stitch so that I've got that V I've got that teardrop effect on both the top and the bottom of this vagina. Excuse me. Alright, so I've finished off with 3 half double crochets into the last stitch, and then I'm going to finish this round by just slip stitching into the top of the chain 2 that I made at the start of this round. Oh dear. Right. And then we have round 1. From here, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to work another round of half double crochet, but this time I want things to start flaring away from this center. I want them to start flaring out, so we've got that real differentiation between them. So for this one, we're going to do half double crochets into the back loop only of each stitch. Now, we covered back loop only when we were making our wristband. So just like the wristband, instead of going under both loops of the V of each stitch, you just want to be going under the loop that's furthest away from you. Now, once you reach where you did your increase, your 3 half double crochets into the 1 stitch, kind of where it was parallel with the top and the bottom, we're going to do another 3 stitch increase into there. So find out where the middle of those 3 stitches are, which mine would be this one here, and we're going to do the increase into that stitch. So I've got 1 last stitch to go back loop, half double crochet, and then into this middle one I'm going to put 3 half double crochets into that back loop. If you can't figure out which one your middle one is, don't worry, just try and get it like generally in the same area. Once again, we're trying to be anatomically correct here, and there's nothing perfect about a vagina. So the more unique and the more odd yours is, the more realistic it is, really. Once you've done your 3 increases into there, just continue around, putting a half double crochet into each back loop. This cotton is really starting to split, hey? Beautiful color, not my favorite cotton. Anyway. Same story here. Once you get to where you made your 3 half double crochets into the top area, find your center stitch. For me, it is not this one. It is this one, and just go ahead and pop another 3 half double crochets into that center stitch to start building up shape. Then I've got 1 last stitch to go of this round. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 2 here. And that's where I say I'm finished with this inner labia. If you want yours to go a little bit higher, depending on the yarn that you're using, the size of your thumbs, the size of your labia, you can go a little bit higher, but just try this on first, hey? Just remember that the outer labia is going to be at least one row higher than this one. So just make sure that you leave enough space for this outer row to sit as well. But if you want to go higher, by all means, go higher. But this is where I am going to fasten off. I'm going to cut that yarn. And I am going to move on to my lightest colour. Oh no. Do you know what I've just realised? This vagina is going to be sitting and shaped completely different to this one. Which is fine, actually, because who's ever seen two identical vaginas? Not me. Haven't seen that many, to be fair, but I'm pretty sure none are identical. So, anyway, so I'm going to move on to my lightest colour, my flesh tone colour for the outer lips. So once again, I'm going to choose to make a slip knot. I'm going to connect that. And this is where I realized I made the mistake. I've started to make my increases here, which means that my V is leaning this way, whereas I really wanted it kind of leaning this way. So what I'm going to do for this last round is attach it where I actually want it. So for this row, we're going to be attaching our yarn around the exact same post that we attached our last colour. So you remember we had our 2 rounds of this darker colour? We still want to be attaching to the bottom round of that darker colour. So I'm not sure that you can see, but we've attached our medium colour to that post. We want to be attaching our lighter colour to the exact same post. So I'm going to attach here, so I'm going to pop it into this gap, put my hook around the back of that post, and then I'm going to attach my yarn. You can tie a knot or you can do a single crochet like I am doing to attach. And then I'm just going to work around each post to get this foundation row of single crochets. So into the next gap, around the back of that post, yarn over, pull through a loop, and yarn over and pull through both. And I'm just going to do that all the way around the same row that I attached the last colour to until I get back to the start. I'm hoping that makes sense, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Alrighty, so I have just put a single crochet into the last stitch of this round. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the first one of this round, which is always tight. And then I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to go around the next round, putting a half double crochet into each stitch. But what I'm going to do is once I get down to where I think the top and the, oh, that's a double crochet. Sorry, I can't talk and do it at the same time. Half double into each stitch. And what I'm going to do is when I get down to where I believe the bottom and the top of my vagina is again, I'm going to do that increase of 3 half double crochets into the one stitch. So I think this is about where I made the last increases. So it's here I'm going to put 3 half double crochet into that one stitch to create that nice shaping. And then continue around with 1 half double crochet into each stitch. Now, this is actually the round where you can start to get a little bit creative. If you want more of a shaved ham in a deli counter kind of look, then you can switch your half double crochets and you can start to make them double crochets or single crochets to kind of get that wavy effect. So it's quite uneven. If you'd rather just have it like ruffle out a little bit and be a bit heavier in some areas, then you can add increases as you go. I hope that makes sense. If you want to start adding a little bit more realistic definition to your vagina, then start increasing in height. So go from half doubles to doubles or to singles, or start increasing so that it has a bit more gathering. And that means just putting 2 stitches into one stitch or 3 stitches into one stitch, so it starts to get a little bit ruffly. And that just gives it that little bit more of a realistic appearance. Now, if you're thinking at this point, oh, well, I wish I did that like on the inner part, because hey, let's face it, everybody's, well, I don't know, I can't say everybody's, but the inner labias that I've seen, you know, they are a little bit grenade set off in a deli counter kind of effect. So if you'd prefer your squishing to happen in this inner labia part, either go back and frog it, start again, or just do it on the next mitten that you make. Like I said, they don't have to be identical, hey, they can both be extremely unique. But that's just a little bit of a tip about how to add a little bit more realistic shape and texture to your vagina. But ultimately, you're just going to keep going around and around and around with these rows until you reach 1 row higher than the row of your inner labia. So once it's equal with the row of your inner labia, then you're going to just add 1 more row. And just to clarify, just in case it doesn't make sense, we're not stitching into the inner labia anymore. We're just building on this color row here. So it's going to be a separate piece. Yeah. But it's still going to be just that 1 row higher. All right. So why don't you just try to dissect that knowledge that I've given you? Hopefully it made sense, and continue around until you have 1 row higher of this outer color than you do of your inner color. And once you do, I will meet you there and we'll go to the next step. Thanks for your patience, guys. I'm confusing myself at the moment, so I can only imagine what it's like for you. But I'm sure it's going to turn out fine. It's going to turn out fine. I hate this cotton. Okay, see you later. Alright, so I have just finished the last flesh colored row of this side, which means that my flesh colored row is just sitting one row higher than my inner labia side. And you know what? I'm looking at this and I'm a little bit bummed. Just a little bit. Because this vagina on this side doesn't look anything like the vagina on this side. And I'm a little bit sad about that, because with my limited exposure to the world, this is what a vagina looks like. But there might be some viewers out there that are like, oh my God, this one is exactly what my vagina looks like. And who am I to know, and who am I to say? And I know this is a gift for my mum, but maybe she's going to look at these two and be like, oh my goodness, Amber, this is what my vagina looked like at 21. This is what my vagina looked like at 25 after giving birth to 4 kids. Like, who knows? And I guess that is the imperfection and potentially the 3 weeks between making this one and kind of like not tracking what I was supposed to be doing. But bring on the asymmetrical, bring on the kooky. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the first stitch of that round. I'm going to fasten off. I'm going to cut my yarn. And then with the tail that's left over, what I do like to do, and once again, I'm only going off like my concept of female anatomy here, but in my mind, a vagina has like a peak and a hood here. Only in my mind, doesn't have to, but in my mind it does. So with this leftover yarn here, I'm going to find my needle and I'm going to thread this leftover yarn into my needle. Once I've got that threaded into my needle, I'm going to find like the pointy increase areas of the top section, and I'm going to kind of fold them together, just this outer layer, this pinkish, not pinkish, but your lightest color, your last round. I'm going to fold them together like so, and I'm simply going to stitch both sides together. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it doesn't have to be a blanket stitch, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. It's just got to cinch those 2 edges together so that they're nice and tight and they form, I don't know, like what in my mind I would perceive as like a clitoral hood, or like a merging of flesh. I don't really know. Like, once again, I'm not a gynecologist. I'm just kind of going off like what image I have in my mind and trying to put it into a fiber form. So honestly, go grab a mirror, go stare into that mirror and see what works with whatever image you have in your mind. Once that's done though, I'm just going to secure that by weaving those ends in somewhere on the general inside of this piece. What a mess. But come too far now to turn back. All right. Then I'm going to try that on. Oh, I did it on the wrong side because that's on the inside. I should have done it up there. Oh, that is a bit of a pain in the ass. I'll show you what I mean. Because we're keeping the mitten seam on the inside, so we're always finishing on the seam. Yeah, somehow I fucked that up. Can you see? I've got a hood here and a hood here. And neither of these vaginas look anything alike, which is probably like making this a really shit tutorial. But if you were having coffee with somebody and they were sitting across from you with either of these mittens or both at the same time, would you kind of be like, oh, excuse me, miss, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm afraid your vaginas aren't even? No, you wouldn't. You'd be sitting there with your camera hidden, trying to film and posting it to TikTok saying, oh my God, I'm sitting across the coffee shop from this lady and I'm wondering, does she actually have vaginas on her hands? So it's all fine. It's all fine. So once I finished this last round, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like it did what I wanted it to do, but I don't know, I kind of felt like because I had this colour for my main mitten, it felt like I'd just kind of glued this odd vagina onto the end, and I was like, that's not very seamless. It feels a bit comical, a little bit garish. So that's when I decided, all right, well, we're going to have to try and blend them together. So I decided to add this row of ruffles in the original mittens colour around the base of the vagina, just to give it that subtle blending. So it's merging into vagina rather than going, I guess, so obvious as this. So if you did your original mitten colour in the same flesh colour that you did your outer labia, you probably don't have to worry about this. It's probably going to be super seamless. But if you didn't, and you kind of in this moral dilemma like I am, then we're going to add this little ruffle seam to make it feel like it just is supposed to fit a little bit better. So stay with me. So to do these ruffles, I'm going to go back to my very original wool colour, the one that I started doing the wristband in, without the double yarning with the silk here. So the very original yarn, I'm going to switch back to that. So I'm going to make a slip knot, insert my hook, and then I'm going to go, or I'm going to try my hardest to go and attach this and work around the exact same post, the exact same original post of this inner colour that I've attached all of these other colour changes to. Does that make sense? So we had this original deep red, we had 2 rows of it. We attached this to the bottom row on the posts, and then we attached this to the bottom row on that same post. And I'm going to try and fit these ruffles, or the beginning of these ruffles, onto the exact same post, which it's going to fit easy. So I'm going to start from my corner. I'm going to go into the gap underneath that first row, behind that post, pop out the other side. I'm going to attach my yarn with a single, oh my goodness. I'm going to attach my yarn with a single, I just attached my yarn with a single crochet. You can attach your yarn however you feel most comfortable. And then I'm just going to go around these posts, making one foundation row of single crochets to begin, just so I've got somewhere to flare out from to make some bigger stitches. So if you want to do these ruffles, go around, just add a foundation row of single crochets to those posts. Once you get back to your first single crochet, just go ahead and slip stitch into that, and then we will move on to the ruffle part. Now guys, just be super careful when you're doing this that you're not actually grabbing deeper. Oh gosh, I just realized none of that was on camera. I hope you got it. I might just film the next few stitches just in case you didn't, but yeah, just make sure you're not like penetrating this layer and fusing them all together, or we're gonna lose our lips, you know. Just make sure you're only going around that original post. Alrighty, so once you've made that row of single crochets as a foundation into those original posts, just go ahead and slip stitch into the first stitch that you made. And then we're going to chain 3. And now we're going to be working double crochets, but we're not going to work one double crochet into each stitch. We're actually going to work 5 double crochets into each stitch along. So this is and 5. So that is 5 double crochets all into that first stitch of the round. As you could tell, I was in Struggle Town right there. So my silicone sleeve of my crochet hook keeps sliding down and like hanging off my hook, so it gets all googly. Which means it is probably my bedtime, but I refuse to sleep until I finish this. So we've just done 5 double crochets into the first stitch, and then we're just going to go into the next stitch with another 5 double crochets all into that one stitch. Now, depending on the type of yarn that you are using and how ruffly you want these ruffles to be, you might want to make that more or less double crochets into each stitch, and you're kind of going to realize whether it's too much or not enough by the time you do the first bunch into that first stitch. So space it out as you like, but you know, for the yarn that I'm using and for the medium ruffle effect that I want, I'm going to go ahead and do 5 in each stitch. So just continue around doing 5 or whatever number you decided on in each stitch of the previous round, and when you get back to the start I will meet you there. Alright, so once I've come to the end of this round, like before, I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 2 that I made in the beginning, and then I'm going to take a look at it and I'm going to be like, nah, you know what, I think I want my ruffles to come up higher than what they do. So if you're like, nah, I reckon my ruffles are perfect just where they are, awesome, you stop, you fasten off, you cut your yarn. But if you are thinking like me and you want your ruffles to be higher, go ahead and chain 2. And then we're just going to go around and put 1 single crochet into every stitch that we just made. Now, bearing in mind a single crochet is not going to give it too much height, but it is going to give it the height that I want. So if you're wanting it to be even higher, if you're even wanting it to blend as like some nuclear freakazoid third set of lips on a vagina, and you want it to be as high as this one, you're obviously going to need to do more than a single crochet, but this is where you need to kind of take all of the concept and all of the baffling jargon that I've given to you in this tutorial and be like, right, this is where I make it my own. And if you want to make it your own, if you want to make this higher or ridged or uneven or whatever, you do that. And you figure out how to do that. You go crazy. Make mama proud. But I'm just going to add 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around. When I get back to the original stitch, I'm going to slip stitch into that to finish. Then I'm going to fasten off. I'm going to cut my yarn. So I will see you back there. Alright, so I have just reached the end here. So I'm going to slip stitch into that first chain 2 that I made. Then I'm going to take a look at it. Maybe try it on. And be like, yeah, I think I'm happy. Oh my goodness. I think I'm happy with where that ruffling fits. That's cute. That's subtle. It's a subtle merge between comfort to statement. So this is where I'm going to finish my ruffles. I'm going to fasten off and cut my yarn, but if you feel like you need your ruffles to be higher, like I said before, you do you. Go mad, use your initiative, make me proud. Be free, grasshopper. So from here, this is kind of where I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, that's better, that's cute, that's a little bit more subtle, that's a better gift to give your 60-year-old mother than just like mitten vagina. I felt like it blended quite well. But then I was looking at the ruffles and I was like, oh, you know, maybe it needs ruffles around the fingers as well. So I decided to add a round of ruffles to the fingers. You totally don't have to, hey? Like, I just feel like I'm giving you all the options. So if you ever find yourself looking at your piece and going, oh, I think it just needs a little bit more, maybe this is the more it needs. But if you do want to add a row of ruffles to the top here, go ahead and touch your yarn that you're making the ruffles with. And then what we're going to do, just to keep this contrast stitch, this break stitch line, if I went under, excuse me, I'll just get out of the way of that. So if I went under both of these stitches here, so under both legs of the V, it would actually pretty much swallow all of that red colour and just leave the little legs here that we're showing. And I really do want that red colour showing through. So what I'm going to do instead is go into the front loop only, and that's going to drop the back loop here and still carry that red colour or that red line break through, if that makes sense. So I'm going to weave in my ends as I do it, so it might make it difficult to see, but you know back loop stitches. Let's just do front loop stitches instead. Yeah? So I'm just going to go around and do a round of half double crochets, 5 half double crochets per stitch, and I'm only going to be working into the front loops of each stitch. So let's do that again. We've got our V there, we've got the back loop, we've got the front loop. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the front loop only of that V, and then yarn over, pull through a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on my hook, and that's 1. I'm going to do that another 4 times into the same stitch. I lost count. I don't know if that's 4 or 5, but I don't really care. It's still going to ruffle. And I'm just going to go around and repeat that into every stitch, putting 5 half double crochets into the front loop of every stitch around. Once I get to the beginning, I'm just going to slip stitch into that first half double crochet that I made. Then I'm going to fasten off, I'm going to cut my yarn, and that's where I'm going to be finishing these mittens. So I will see you there. Alrighty friends, so if you were choosing to add the ruffles up the top and you have finished, go ahead and fasten off, cut your yarn, and then, don't know what happened there, don't really care, don't look at it, look at my vagina instead. Guys, then you're pretty much finished, hey? Except now you've got to go and do everything that you did on this one to this one, with a few changes if you want to make a few changes. But yeah, you do need 2 mittens. So go ahead and, I guess if you need to replay the video from the start, make your second mitten, and then once you've made both mittens you can get even more creative. You can go ahead and bedazzle your mittens if you want. I've got a beautiful little oyster and pearl charm just at the clip there, which I think is quite appropriate, or you can leave them as they are. But because mine were like, one was going this way and one was going this way, I was like, oh, I felt like I needed to add that. But that's it. Well done. Thank you so much for, if you've obviously made it this far, thanks so much for making it this far. I know I can be a little bit unorthodox or a little bit of a rambler, but hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you've managed to make some really odd out there statement pieces. If you are making this as a gift to your mother, like I am, hopefully she loves it. I don't know if my mum's ever going to wear this, but you know, she will love it because it was made by me. It's like all of my primary school report cards that sit in a box under her bed, or all of those dioramas or finger paintings that I made from her. It's the same thing. It's made with love. That's all that matters. So hopefully whoever gets these from you absolutely loves them as well. I've still got to figure out how to position this, but that'll be a me thing. You don't have to worry about that. But hey, thank you so much for joining me. If you do make it this far, and if you do end up with something you're pretty happy with, hey, I'd love to see your little vagina mittens. So if you want to head over to Instagram, if you have Instagram, and tag me. Oh, I missed a thread. If you want to head over to Instagram and tag me at Hazy Maisie Creations. Otherwise, if you want to leave a comment below, letting me know who you're making this for, that'd be awesome. If you do want to comment below and, you know, have a crack at my delivery style, that's cool too. A comment's a comment, you know, it's all traffic in the end. But I'm pretty comfy with what I'm doing right now. If you decide to make these and sell them, fair play to you. Like, if you know people who are going to pay money for these, that just makes me absolutely giddy with joy. Go for it. I can't wait to shake someone's hand wearing these and be like, oh my god, they're my vagina mittens. So absolutely go for it. But if you get a chance, I'd really love if you could make a link to this video or make a link to me. Just so we can both benefit from it. My ideal goal, I guess, with YouTube is to eventually get, you know, enough watches or enough subscribers to monetize from it in a small way. So if you're going to be monetizing, just give a direction to me so that eventually some place down the future, so many vagina themed things later, I'll be able to monetize a little bit from that as well. I think that's only fair. This end is really bugging me, so I'm going to go ahead and weave that in. I really don't feel like I've got anything else to say. I feel like I've said way too much in this video already. So thank you, friends. Thank you for dealing with me. Thank you for being an absolute freak who would click on this video to begin with. I love it. I've tried to stick to like safe stuff that like everybody would like in my tutorials, and it feels like a little bit of a chore at times to oh, that's weaved in. It does feel like a little bit of a chore at times to complete them because, you know, they just don't really ignite my passion. So if you're watching this, thank you for supporting the outer reaches of my mind. Okay, I'm gonna go stop talking. Have fun. Mwah, 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 mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh, Amber, go to bed.